as hundreds of thousands of Americans suffered trying to cope with the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, dealing with a government that many of them had felt had forgotten about them, left them behind. Here we stand almost some 10 years later, in 2004, many of us familiar with the events of this past summer and the strange messages sent to us by our criminal justice system, where in the same breath that we all applaud a commander-in-chief who looks like me and many of you all in this room, who prefers a fist bump to a handshake, in that same breath, a 17-year-old boy can go to a store, leave unarmed with nothing but a beverage and some candy, be shot and killed, when the message that we are told is that no one is at fault. For as much as things have changed, things are very much so the same. 10 years ago, affirmative action was under attack, and we had only those champions of civil rights to protect it and preserve it, along with some of our friends on the Supreme Court who know and understand the importance of diversity in our classrooms. 10 years later, affirmative action remains under attack and on her last leg as those same champions of civil rights struggle to continue the fight, and those same friends on the Supreme Court do what they can to hold the line for as long as they can. We struggle with issues related to the Voting Rights Act. Key provisions haven't been eviscerated from that act. And we will soon, no doubt, engage in battle against those who would seek to disenfranchise thousands of citizens who would hope to vote for an agenda which speaks to opportunity and equality over exclusion and elitism. It is my belief that I am here by divine providence, and I will tell you why. The more I reflected on my remarks, I was drawn to the legacy of Charles Hamilton Houston. And so when I heard that this evening, this event was named after him, I knew that there was a reason that I was here. Charles Hamilton Houston is, in fact, one of my favorite attorneys. He is a titan in the civil rights struggle. You've already heard from your vice president about some of what he accomplished during his career, but he is quite simply one of the greatest legal minds that our profession has ever known, and was the architect of the legal aspects of the civil rights movement, even though he did not live to see most of it come to fruition. In short, Charles Hamilton Houston was the David to Jim Crow's Goliath. And so I think about a quote from Charles Hamilton Houston, and that is, a lawyer is either a social engineer or a parasite upon society. A lawyer is either a social engineer or a parasite upon society. In plain speak, what he's really saying is, if you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. And so what does that mean? What does that mean, James? It means that each and every one of us has a higher obligation as attorneys of color to think carefully about this noble field which we are about to undertake. We do not have the luxuries of some of our counterparts in being able to turn our backs and simply say, well, I'm just a corporate lawyer, or I'm just a tax lawyer. See, Rose, the thing about being an attorney of color is that we have a higher obligation and responsibility to do more than some of our counterparts. And let me explain what I mean. By a show of hands, how many students in this room are first-generation lawyers or will be first-generation lawyers? Look around. You can put your hands down. How many people in this room by a show of hands are second or third generation lawyers? Look around. Now consider that if this were a reflection of your entire graduating class, the numbers would be completely reversed. I attend various professional functions, and Yvonne, it's not just something specifically for attorneys of color. I remain in the minority. There is so much work which needs to be done. And so, in writing my remarks, I thought a little bit further. And I said, well, what does it mean? And I thought about my own path, my own journey through the law. I came out of law school and began at the DA's office. Now, I'm going to tell you, when I first went to law school, I had two primary objectives. The first one was I wanted to engage in a career which would provide me an opportunity to get into the field of electoral politics. The second was even more straightforward. I wanted to get paid. I bear no bones about that. I wanted the simple, efficient, and direct route to that elusive land of a six-figure tax bracket that my parents had so often talked to me about. I was going to work for a large firm for about 7 to 9 years. I was going to make partner Leland. And then I was going to work for another 10 to 12 years, make fistloads of money, retire, and do something different. Yeah. I'm not sure if y'all were paying attention when Dr. Norwood read my bio, but it's not exactly what happened. And given that I am a man of faith, I knew that God had a plan. And I knew that his plan for me was something different. That my skill set was such that I was meant to contribute to the advancement of social justice in a different way. And I'm here tonight to tell you all that each of you has a valuable contribution to make in that same journey for social justice. And so, what does that mean? I know you sit here, Abner, and you look at me and you say, well, Attorney Coleman, I'm really not understanding what that means in the big picture. Well, it means that as the social engineers of tomorrow, each and every one of us in this room must be prepared to engage with an enemy that is very real, that is very sophisticated, and that is even more insidious than his predecessor. I see it every day on my job at the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The days of being told what water to drink and what bathroom to use may be gone. But trust and believe that those policies are still very much so alive. And it's harder to hit a target that you can't see. The solutions will not jump off of the page. They will require hard work. They will require dedicated focus and intense thought. They will require for you to engage in a lot longer than 140 characters. That is the charge of the attorney of color in 2013. That is what each and every one of us must do. That is the same spirit and dedication that Charles Hamilton Houston employed when sitting down to lay out the blueprint to dismantle Jim Crow. These answers did not jump off the page to him or anyone with whom he worked. These answers were spent, they came from long, hard hours of thought, of discussion, of being challenged. They came, Danielle, from being committed to social engineering. That is what each of us must understand. How do you take down an institution like the New York Police Department when they are employing a practice like stop and frisk? How do you walk into court and represent hundreds and thousands in spirit of black and brown males who have been discriminatorily stopped for no reason other than the use of fear in community policing? You do it by having that same dedication, that same commitment to asking yourself the hard questions, that same commitment to social engineering. But beyond that, you do that by controlling your narrative. I am indeed a huge proponent of the importance of controlling your narrative. See, as attorneys, what it is that we do, whether you realize it or not, we are storytellers. We facilitate stories being told. A client comes to you, they say, this happened to me, I was wrong, I am seeking redress. There are any number of remedies which can be applied to give me redress and make me whole again, whether on the criminal end or whether on the civil side. It is your job to figure out, how do I now tell that story? If you are a prosecutor, you tell the story from the state's point of view. You control that narrative. If you are a defense attorney, you tell the story from the perspective of the accused, and you poke holes in the other narrative. Controlling your narrative is key, because if you do not control your narrative, someone will control it for you. As attorneys of color, I cannot overstate the importance of this. We must think critically about what our narratives will be. And so, if you're going to be that tax lawyer, consider that your narrative can be perhaps donating your services pro bono to a small business in your neighborhood, helping to make stronger communities. If you are going to be that corporate attorney, maybe your narrative doesn't include free services because of the type of work that you do. But maybe those of us who might be doing a little bit better can make contributions in other ways to keep that cogwheel of social justice turning, to answer that call of responsibility. I want to talk to you a little bit about controlling your own narrative. People have asked me on different occasions what I thought went wrong in Florida in terms of the prosecution's case. And I told them on several occasions that my theory is that the prosecution lost control of the narrative. They lost control of the big picture, and they began to become baited into a back and forth about smaller details which ultimately didn't matter in the big picture. They let that narrative get away from them, and they let that narrative get away from the jury, and that's why we got what we got. And so I stress to you the importance of controlling your narrative. By way of contrast, if you look at Floyd versus City of New York, those attorneys controlled that narrative. They never let the judge, even in a bench trial, forget about the anecdotes and the stories that were connected to each of the victims that they presented. Each of those plaintiffs had a narrative. And the prosecution had thought long and hard about how to convey that narrative. And they were successful. That's what they did. And so tonight, I charge each of you all to think critically about your narrative. Because if you don't, someone else will retell it. That someone might even be you, telling your narrative the wrong way. Telling your narrative about the attorney that you wish that you might have been, but for that commitment to social justice, but for that dedication to being a social engineer. If you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. Control your narrative. I can't stress to you the importance of it. I congratulate each of the honorees tonight on their well-deserved awards. I thank you for being here and hope that everyone enjoys a wonderful